Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Code Retro. So today we'll be talking about file processing in Python. So how we handle files, how we store information in files. So without further ado, let's get started. So what is a file in the first place and why should we use a file? So let's say you have a program now and you want to process some things in this program, but when your program is not running, you want to still have information to be able to continue from where your processing stopped in the previous program. This way you need to store your information on a file so you can load your information back from this file when you run the program again, and you can save it back when you're about to close the program. So that's the main feature of like using a file. So a file is just simply a name location on your secondary storage to store related information. That's just what simply a file is. So in file processing here, let me just go ahead and say code it. So yeah, in file processing, there are 3 steps that we use, that we will mostly follow when we are performing any task, when we are trying to process a file, whether we are trying to retrieve an information or store in information. So the first one is opening the file. So opening a file, that's the first thing we do, opening a file. So, and the second thing we do now is reading or writing to this file. So after we open this file, we want to either read or write to this file. And the last thing we do right here is closing the file. So whenever we are done with reading or writing to this file, we are done with working with this file, we want to make sure that we always close the file. We don't want to leave any file open for any reason. We want to make sure that we always close this file when we are done working with them. So these are the 3 processes we are going to be working with when we are like working with the file and throughout this tutorial. So how do we open a file? So let's talk about file opening today. Okay, and before we talk about file opening, I'll quickly like to talk about mode of handling files in Python. So when we are opening a file, we need to only specify the mode we want to open this file. So the mode is specified with these characters or string, just like this. And now you can see what each of them stand for and the behavior that we are going to have there. So we are mostly going to be using R or read only. So this is just when we want to just read from the file, and it's going to open this file, but the file must exist when we are using this letter R, character R. If it does not exist, it's going to raise an error, and then we're going to be using W to write as a writing mode here, and it's going to open the file for writing. If this file does not exist, it's going to create a new file or truncate the existing file. So that's about that. So you can just go through this, pause the video and go through this R plus, which is for read and writing mode. Then I'll be plus, then we are going to be using W plus 2, that's to write and read. So that's when we want to open this file for both writing and reading operation. So it creates a new file or truncate the existing file. That's if a file exists before. So you can also pause this slide and check the other modes that we have and just read the description and the attribute and the behavior. Okay, so now let's talk about opening a file. How do we open a file? So the first thing we want to do is to have a variable that is going to take in this file. So we are going to know that yes, we are opening this file. So I can just go ahead and say now I want to have file. Let's just call it file, and I'll just call it like okay. Now I want to use this built-in function called open. Then I want to specify the name of this file. So now I'm specifying the name of the file and the extension. So this is file text.txt as a test file. Then after that, now as a parameter here, we need to put in the mode right here as a second parameter. So now we are going to be opening this in a writing form, right? So I'm going to put in W here because I want to write to this file, and this file does not exist before. If you can look at our Explorer here, the file does not exist, so it's not existing. So to write to this file now, okay, to just get some attributes of this file now, we can just go ahead and say print out. We want to check the mode of this file. So I can just do right here to say, okay, file mode right here. Then I'll just come here and say plus file dot mode. Don't forget, I always want to close my file in this application. I always want to close my file. We've not done anything on the second process right now, which is reading or writing to the file, but we just print an attribute of the file, which is to check the mode of this file. whether it's what the mode is, and now you can see the file mode is W, which is standard for writing. So how do we write to this file? The other attribute you can check just like name. And now if you check the Explorer, you will see the file here, right? You can see the file text.txt. So you can also check for the name of the file. Now you can see the file name is text.txt, and now you can decide to check for, is the file closed? You know, we open the file right here. So okay, this is a boolean attribute and it's not a string, so I just like to eliminate this string. We can't concatenate a boolean and a string, so I just like to print file.close false because the file is not closed, because we open the file right here, so the mode is open from there. Now you can see that we open the file like this with the function open, then two parameters there, the name of the file or the location. This can just be something like your C drive, and just like specify some location, then the mode as the second parameter. So take note of that. Then now you close the file after every operation. So we've not actually written anything to our file. So how can we write to this file? So to write to this file, all we need to do is just say file.write. So we are using this function now, file.write, and now we want to specify, we want to just write out the string we want to write. I'll just say this is my first line. Okay, I'm just specifying now. Okay, this is my first line. Okay, and I want to end this with a new line character since I'm writing to this file. So I'll just like to write again to this file, and I'll just say file.write. This file is the first file. Then I just want to put a new line there. So you can just continue writing like this, and you will see that all these strings, all these text will be written into the file. I'll just send it. This is written by Drew. Okay, so now I can just go ahead and run this program now. Yeah, no output, but if I go ahead and check my text file, I can see all the text I previously write. Right, this is my first line. This file is the first file, and it is written by Drew. Now you can see that this new line character, make sure it starts on the next line. So if I should go ahead and just like get rid of this new line character, you can see what it will give as a result, and now you can see that they are all together on the same line. So that's what the new line character helps us to do right there. So this is how you write to a file, and it's just as simple as this. But this is not the only function you can use to write to a file, and here's another way you can write to a file. So you can just decide to have a list like this, and I can just go ahead and say my list, and I can just come ahead. Okay, let me just, okay, so I can just copy and paste this. I can say my list right here is equals to, so I can have a list of strings right here. So what I'll do here is just go ahead here, okay, cut this, paste it here, and end this with a new line. Then go ahead and cut this second line. So when we cut this second line, you just want to, okay, paste it here. So now I can now use what I call write lines here, what is called write lines. So you can just go ahead and say file.write lines, which is going to write all these. It's going to take in a string as a parameter, and it's going to write all these lines together at once to the file. So we are giving it this list as a parameter right there. So if I should go ahead and run this, so let's just get rid of this and make sure this is saved. So now the file is empty, so I can just go ahead and run this. Now if I check this file, I can see it has been written right there. So just for clarity's sake, let me put this as Andrew and just run this again. Okay, now for the sake of clarity, now you can see that now, yes, the file was modified and the write lines function work quite all right. So you can see the 3 steps there. We open the file, we write or read from the file, and we close the file. So now we've seen how we can read, how we can write to this file, but how can we read from this file? So now let's talk about reading from the file. So I'll just go ahead and, okay, should I clean this? Okay, let me just go ahead and cut this out. So if you want to read from the file, we want to open this in the reading mode. I want to make sure we're opening this in the reading mode, and we just go ahead right here and say A is equals to file.read. Now I've initialize something by saying file.read, so I can just go ahead and say I want to print out A. So let's see what will happen if I go ahead and run this program now. Now you can see that we read everything here and we have it all printed out here. But what if I go ahead again and say something like b is equals to file dot read, and right here I try to print out b. Now you see I have nothing because it stores, it write everything and it store it to the value a. So one other thing I can do right here is use read lines. And what is this going to do for me? So I'll just go ahead and show you now. Using read lines right here, you can see it gives us back as a list, and this is the exact list, the exact way we wrote the file in the first place. This is how the list was written, right? So using read lines now give us back the list that we put into the function write lines. Of that, take note of that. And now I can just go ahead and say I want to loop through this list now in A, and I want to print out each line out. So I'll just like the list to come first. So I would like to have the list here. So if the list is here now, I can go ahead and just say now I have it here and I am printing it out right here. You can see that it's giving it the gap. That's for the new line character. So now we've seen how to read and write from this file, but there's something we also called file positioning. We have some method that help us to detect the file position in our file. So when I mean file position, it means like the position of a file. So we have two methods specifically, which is the tail and seek. We have the tail method just like this, and we have the seek method. So the tail method tell us, you want the method now know the current position of the file pointer in a file. So in a file, there's always a pointer that is pointing to the current position, while the seek method is to change the position of the file pointer. So if you want to get the current position now of a file, all we need to do is just go ahead and say print out. Okay, let me just leave that there. So all we need to do is to go ahead and just type print a dot file. Sorry, I'm printing file dot tail. So if I go ahead and say file dot tail now, getting 75. That's the number of character, the position, that's the character number there on the position, the current position that this file is. That's telling us the current position that this file is. And something that this can also help with, if I should say read and I specify something right here, I should run this. Okay, I'm just so now you can see THE. And why THE is because it's giving us the first three character back. That's D, right? D. But if you notice, when this was uncommented, I'm not getting any character back. That's because it's starting from where the file pointer stopped. And initially, right here, the file pointer stopped at the end of the file itself, which is the 75th character. And after the 75th character, there's no other character to read from. And that's why we get nothing from there. But now, when it was commented out, the file pointer is 0. That's from the beginning. And right here, if I should say tail instead, you see that this file will be at the position 0. But right here, if this, okay, let me uncomment this A. So if I should uncomment this line now, so if I should go ahead and uncomment this line and I change this to read, and I'm reading to the 20th character, let me just print out A right here, and let's see. So now you can see that this file pointer is on the 20th character, right? This is my first line, then, and it's on the 20th character. So that's how to know the current position that the file is pointed to. But now, how do we work with the seek method? In order to read a data item from anywhere in this file now, we have to move the file pointer to the beginning of this item data to accomplish this kind of task. So we have to use the seek method now to make sure that we are doing this. And when you're using the seek method, it takes in two parameters. So it's going to first start with the offset, then we are going to have from where we are taking it from, the offset and where we are taking it from exactly. So we can have different scenarios right here. So you can just have like, okay, if you have something like, well, I'm working with this file now, we have the offset and we have the from value. So these are the possible values that we can put as this from. And when we say this from, is either from the beginning, from the current position, or from the end of the file. So 0 now signifies that from the beginning of the file, that's why we're giving this offset. Then 1 now signifies that from the current position of the file, that's why we're giving this offset. Then end of the file will tell us that, okay, from the end of the file. So I should just go ahead and say file.seek. Now I put in 0, 0. So we know that this from is from the beginning of the file, right? So this is going to move the pointer from the beginning of the file. If the pointer is at the beginning of the file, it returns no action. So this will just move the pointer to the beginning of the file because we have no offset. But if I should specify 10 right here, and we know normally right here, because this file is currently getting the 20th character, can print out the tail right here and just go ahead and say current position right here, and the current position of the file is file.tail, right? So current position is file.tail, and now what I want to do right here is print out the position again. I will just go ahead and say position after seek. I'll call this file.tail. So let's go ahead and run this and see. Okay. So I have a typo there. So now the current position was 20 because I was reading the line of 20, but from the beginning now, okay, from the beginning of the file now, I'm having an offset of 10. Now offset of 0, I just want to move this to the end of the file. So I'm just taking this to the end of the file, and now you can see that I'm at the 75th point of this file. Yes, so that's all about file handling with Python today. See you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.